Well, hello, everyone. This is John Byrne with Poets and Quants. Welcome to our brown bag session with Washington University's Olin Business School. We're going to talk about entrepreneurship, and in particular, this incredible elevator pitch contest that we have coming up. It's the second annual one with Poets and Quants and WashU's Olin Business School. We have with us today the Academic Director of Entrepreneurship, Doug Villhard, who's going to talk about both the competition, but more importantly, I think, for all you prospective entrepreneurs out there, a 5-point litmus test for deciding whether or not you really have a successful, potentially outrageously successful startup idea. Doug, how are you today?
John, I'm great. Thanks for having me. I look forward to talking about the competition and answering that question. Is your startup idea a good one? This will be fun.
That's fantastic. Let's give people an overview of the elevator pitch contest. The deadline is January 15th. What do people have to do to enter, and what are we looking for?
Yeah, so if we'll advance to the next slide there. So this is our second year doing this, and it was a lot of fun last year, John, and you were a big part of it. But all folks need to do is to scan this little QR code here or search for the contest on Poets and Quants website to enter. But you need to be a current student. So to be an undergraduate student or someone who is considering earning their MBA. Right, so considering applying or earning their MBA. So that's the category of folks. And then all they have to do in the first round, John, is just enter sort of a couple questions about their business idea. What problem are you solving? Your solution, competition, some things like that. And then if selected, then we get down to basically filming a 2-minute video about yourself. And then we'll select 3 of these to not just compete in the contest, but really, we've really kind of turned into a television show. Well, so you're competing on lines, but the first one is just to enter a couple prompts about your contest and register with us.
And it's super easy to do it. The form is as easy as you can get. It doesn't take a whole lot of time to enter. And then we're going to select a batch of folks that we think are the most promising. We'll publicize your idea and your team. And then the judges will choose 3 finalists who will end up on the campus in St. Louis of Washington University's Olin Business School and actually pitch in front of a group of judges for the $50,000 prize, which is pretty darn generous.
That's right. And if we go to the next slide here, we've got a little video that kind of shows what we did last year. So if we hit play on that, we'll watch this, 30 seconds. Oops, sorry about the sound here. So I'll just narrate it, but actually you can kind of watch it here. So that was our winner last year, Pedal Cell, and you can see how this is kind of a television show, the way that it was shot and the big winners and such like that. And you can watch that. You can watch this recording online too, John, which is really fun, and it gives people a sense of what the big show is like. So not only do you, if we'll go to the next slide here, not only do we have the chance to win this money, but as John said, you really get a lot of publicity about what you're doing here too. If you'll go back just a slide, then we'll wrap this up. Great. Thank you very much. So, and sorry, I'm not controlling the deck today. I apologize. I wish that I was. Technical difficulties. So exciting.
So the registration deadline, again, is January 15th. If you come to the site or use the VR code on the screen, you can enter very easily. And soon enough, you'll know whether a batch of finalists. When do we think we're going to have the final pitch in person in St. Louis?
Yeah, it's usually traditionally in March. Or so between January and March, we'll figure out those finalists and fly them out and coach them up and put on the big show.
And as you saw in the video, which you can see online, it's actually on YouTube and it will be on our site shortly. We had 158 submissions last year from all over the world. The winner was a team from Colorado, actually, called Pedal Cell, a great idea. And they actually had a product that they brought to their presentation, but you don't even have to have a product, right, Doug? You can just have a great idea.
That's right. That's right. Although, John, it doesn't have to be a product, but having something visual and having some type of traction and being a little bit further along can help you. But so do prototype designs. One of the finalists did not have a product, but they had a conceptual drawing of it too. And that's good storytelling, but that's also good tactics for entrepreneurship too, to have some basic kind of sense of how this works so that you can get feedback on it.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
something visual is important.
Absolutely. Obviously, that makes a big impression on the judges. I can speak to that since I was a judge, which is why you see a very somber John Byrne in the video, looking at the presentations and judging them, which was really great fun. Now,
Yeah.
let me talk a little bit about you, Doug, because you're not only a so-called professor and the academic director of entrepreneurship at Olin. You're a serial entrepreneur, you're a VC, you've launched a whole bunch of different interesting companies and backed a bunch of interesting companies. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, my pleasure. So we'll go to the next slide here, and I'll be saying next a couple of times because this is animated. But I'm Doug Villhard, and I'm the professor of entrepreneurship, or one of the professors of entrepreneurship at WashU and the academic director. But if you'll click next, I started my career out at Disney, which is just a really fun place to work and allowed me to be really creative. And if you'll hit next again, and I founded a company called Max Preps, with which folks in the United States may know. It's kind of the ESPN of high school sports, if you will. It's owned by CBS now. And I think, John, that one thing, it doesn't necessarily make me unique, but I think students enjoy being taught by someone who's actually done this and doing this and has raised a lot of money and such like that. So I think of it like, if you want to learn brain surgery, do you want to learn from books, or do you want to learn from someone who's actually practicing brain surgery before you go and open up a brain? So I fit that category. And the next,
yeah, I want to learn from someone who's been there and done it.
That's right. So next, a little advance here. So I started a company called Second Street, which I just sold. It was public. The number's not so important. We'll talk about it later, but sold for a lot of money. So it's kind of fun to be financially retired too, and giving back in a different way here and teaching. Next slide here. And then that allowed me to create a private equity firm and a venture capital firm. And then next slide, I have made so many investments now, over 20 plus investments, John, in startups, and many of them out of WashU. And I sit on many of these boards too. So it's really, really fun to be in the space, both as a founder and as an investor. And then next slide, and this is just kind of fun for a second. I released my first book too here in the last month or so. And though it is a work of fiction, it's about an entrepreneur and kind of weaves in all the themes that we teach at Olin. So that's pretty fun. But if you go to the next slide here, is when you're an entrepreneurship professor, there's a question that you are always going to get from people. And I wish it was like, tell me the secrets to success, the top thing that I could learn, or something like that, coming out of my lectures, but it's not. It's a very important question. If you'll hit next here, folks want to know, thanks. Folks want to know, is my idea a good idea? Is my idea a good idea? And John, that makes sense for this presentation as people are entering this big contest and want to win. How do I know if my idea is good and how can I make it better? So if we click next again, and two more times for me here. So we've developed this little litmus test, if you will. So it's 5 questions that you can ask yourself to get a sense, as John said, not just of a good idea, but if it's an outrageously good idea or not. And if you're weak in one of these, opportunity is to improve it. So one more click here. So the first one, John, is all important companies, big companies, are solving some type of problem for their customer. And the more significant the problem that you're solving means that the customer is having a serious pain point with that. And when people are in pain, they are willing to pay just about anything to get out of pain. Okay, so that's the first thing you're asking yourself is, what problem am I solving and how important is it to the customer? Because any of us that have ever made $1 before in our lives, it was not easy making that dollar, and we don't just throw it away and give it away. There has to be a reason that we're spending it. Okay, so that's the first thing you need to ask yourself. Second thing is the market growing? Is the market growing? It is so hard to get a customer. It's so hard to get a customer. And then if there's not more of them being created each day, it really goes against you. And John, it was public information. I sold my company for $30 million 2 years ago. And that sounds like a lot of money. I think a lot of people would like to have that. But why didn't I sell it for 30 billion? It's because I was servicing television, newspaper, and radio stations for my customer. And as you know, John, there's not new ones of those opening every day. It's just the opposite. That's the market that's getting smaller, right? So if I would able to apply my own test 20 years ago, I might have picked it. There's nothing wrong with what I sold it for and such like that. But I might have realized that was going to be a big challenge for me.
Right.
And I didn't have myself as a teacher back then. So especially when we're in our idea stage, we need to ask ourselves this. Next one here, number 3, is a founder with a personal familiarity. So like John is an entrepreneur. John started Poets&Quants here. And before that, you were at Newsweek, correct? And
Business Week.
Or Business Week, rather, Business Week. Yeah, and it's just very, very important that an entrepreneur, especially going to give your life to this new endeavor, that you know something about it in the industry. And John, I will never start a company that has to do with offshore drilling off of the Gulf of Mexico, not for environmental reasons even, or ethics or anything along those lines. I've never been on one. I've never stepped on one. I don't know anything about it. So this should be something, and that if you're interested in the area, you better become an expert in it quick. But the more you know about it, the better. Next one here, and this is what we teach in business school. It's one thing to start this, but are you unique? Is your strategy such that it's hard for others to copy you? There will be innovations continually over and over again, and are you willing to keep up with it? Right. So it's kind of the block and tackle part. And the fifth one is not only is it hard to get a customer, it's hard to keep them too. So you really want to design something for customers that are going to continually purchase from you. And so this is the setup of a great business. So let's test it, John. So if we'll hit 2 more clicks here, we'll test it with a company people may have heard of before. I'm assuming people may have heard of McDonald's before. And I think it would be safe to say, John, that that's an outrageously successful company, correct? Absolutely. But when you run it through the test here, something starts happening. So does it solve a big problem? Well, I would say yes. It solves. I believe it. People think food, but it's not food. It solves the problem of time, really, of getting something very quick meal. You could say cheap too, but it definitely solves the problem of time. And I think people would say, John, that people feel like they have less time more than more time. So I think they're in that world there for 1 and 2. The founders, the McDonald's brothers, were experts in getting a hamburger out quickly and with the same quality. You can see that in the movie The Founder. It was about that. But number 4 is where they actually fall apart. Not the only place that you can get a hamburger, and you can get, and there's just rife with competition there, and recurring. I don't have to. I ate at McDonald's this morning. I don't have to eat at McDonald's tomorrow, right? So you say, well, wait a second. What kind of test is this? But what it is it's actually a test you can't pass. It is very hard to pass all 5 of these. So what this test does, John, is it shows you where you're weakest and where you'll be spending the rest of your career trying to improve. In McDonald's case, that's why we're doing McCafe. That's why we're leaning into coffee. That's why we're continually leaning into things to try to differentiate ourselves, especially as market conditions.
Although
such like that.
In the early days, McDonald's certainly was scalable and evolving, and on some level, because of the systems that they deployed to make food quickly and cheaply, maybe not as easy to replicate. I mean, yes, there was plenty of chains that followed McDonald's, but never one with the kind of success McDonald's had.
That's right. But there's lots of other fast food restaurants.
Absolutely.
They've created that category, and they have to compete with them all the time, right? So if we click next here, we'll test another one against this. So Netflix, okay, right? So this one is really interesting too. Solves a problem, boredism, being bored, escapism, absolutely. Is that growing? Absolutely. Did the founders know a lot about that? They actually didn't know a lot about digital at the time, but they knew a lot about shipping CD-ROMs at the time and logistics at the time. But again, they have this issue with number 4. How many streaming services are there now, John?
Too many.
Yeah, many.
Annoying.
Yeah, many. And the stock's been having some trouble recently, sustaining the type of growth and such like that as a result of that. But they're very good at number 5. They're very good at number 5 in that recurring model. So it's just another example that it's very hard to hit all 5, but you look at your weakest area, number 4 here, and they just need to keep being very creative with the type of unique content that they generate. In fact, they spend $1 billion a month on content creation, because it just turns out what I like and what John likes to watch are not the same thing, much less in a different country, genders, race, etc. So very difficult. Now let's test another one here real quick. So Starbucks, Starbucks, really interesting as you run down this. If you look at number 5, same type of thing though. I don't have to get another drink from Starbucks, John, but people do. And the caffeine in particular is very much on strategy for them. So when they apply this against that and they think of new products and services, if it doesn't have caffeine in it, it's going to be kind of hard to get it through the board meeting because of how important that is to their model. And we'll just look at 2 more quick ones. One more is mine, which is Second Street. And I talked about that before. It just really falls apart on number 2. That's why I sold it for 30 million instead of 30 billion, for example. But I spent, all my time in my career working on number 2. Let's look at 2 more. If you look at the next one here, which is Google, this one almost hits them all, John. And this is when you start realizing that what I've really done here, what I really have here is the definition of a monopoly. And I know Google does not like to hear that. They don't want to be broken out by the government, but it gets real close. And if we hit next one more time, you can really see it when you think of like a utility company, for example. Right. So what this test does is it exposes immediately where you're the weakest, and that's where you're going to be improving this business idea the rest of the time that you own it.
Now, Doug, if we were to look at last year's winner of the contest, Pedal Cell, how do they match up against these 5 points?
Yeah, so Pedal Cell is a device that is attached to your bicycle. And as you're pedaling, it creates electricity that our battery basically that then powers your phone. Okay, and in that particular case, it is really targeted to long distance bike riders, if you will. Okay, and there were a lot of reasons why they won the contest, but there's also, John, a lot of reasons why. I hate to say this about anybody, but they're not going to be $1 billion company either.
Right.
It has to do with number
niche play. It's a real niche play.
Yeah, it has to do with number 1. And you can show that there's growth in that area, that there's more long distance riders. By the way, they need GPS in order to know where they are. They're not just riding around the neighborhood. Like if their phone goes out, they're in trouble. They can't get help. Don't know where they are. This is a very important problem to a smaller group of customers, and that overall dictates your value.
So they hit 2, 3, and 4, but 1 and 5 a bit lacking.
Yeah, and maybe 5. That's why you see so many subscription services these days. Even I bought a new car recently, which I pay monthly for, which is not my. I don't pay monthly for my payment, but I subscribe monthly, which is my Tesla. And if I stop doing those monthly payments, or I'm sorry, the monthly subscription, I won't have access to the internet in there anymore. And I won't have access to my music and all the other things that are connected to it. So companies find more and more ways to get recurring revenue out of you. And maybe Pedal Cell will do that over time because they'll realize you just sell the unit and that's it. You don't have a relationship with the customer anymore.
So it's possible to be successful and not meet all 5 for sure. right?
Yeah. I mean, like I said before, I sold mine to a public company, so we talk about the number. But yeah, I don't think 30 million is so terrible. Me and my family feel pretty good about that, and the wealth that we've generated. So yeah, absolutely. Very few companies could ever meet my whole test, but the more you meet it, the more outrageously successful you will be.
Yeah, that's clear by your examples. So
Yeah.
for all of you out there, take a look at this litmus test, see if your idea checks the box on the majority of them, maybe 4 out of 5, and then enter a contest, right, Doug?
Yep, that's right. If we'll just go to the next slide here, our final slide here. Yes, this is run your entry against this before you turn it in. And it would also be my pleasure to talk to you too. And I have my email on here too, John. I'm not a judge. I'm not a judge. I think of myself as like everybody's coach, if you will, in this process, and get a little taste maybe of what WashU Olin is like too, in that process. But it would be my pleasure to talk to you about your idea. I'll ask you to run it against a test on your own, show me where you're the weakest, and tell me what you're going to do about it. And that's a fun conversation for us to have, John.
Exactly. And the other thing is, I know that when the 3 finalists came to St. Louis to present, they were given a lot of coaching and a lot of feedback from Doug, who was incredibly helpful to them in shaping how they presented their idea.
Yeah, that's right. And not a commercial for WashU. I think it would be a commercial for any MBA program, but that's what we do. That's what we do in these types of programs is we take your idea where it is and we really workshop it and try to make it the best that it can be. Or, John, people learn on their own to abandon that idea and to pivot to something else. And we celebrate that in entrepreneurship. We clap for that. I'd rather you figure that out while it's theoretical than after you've already raised money and hired employees and such like that, only to figure out that there's no market for it. But that's kind of the process that we do in entrepreneurship programs at the MBA level.
That's great. And I should note that obviously one of the reasons why we're partnering with WashU's Olin Business School on this competition is because we have ranked Olin Business School the #1 MBA program for entrepreneurship. And a lot of that has to do with Doug and his connections to the ecosystem in St. Louis, because you might ordinarily think, well, the best place to do entrepreneurship may be Silicon Valley or some other place. But in fact, the business community in St. Louis is incredibly supportive of each other. There's a thriving ecosystem of incubators and supporters and backers and investors in new ideas. And it's really an incredibly dynamic environment for a would-be entrepreneur.
Yeah, it's one of those cities that is big enough to matter, but small enough where you can really learn all the players, and they're excited for you to be there. And of course, WashU is a major player in St. Louis, so they're very excited to work with students and such through here. But it just has formed great density in the last couple of years of successful companies, successful funders, successful co-location or co-working spaces, and just has really been a fantastic community. But one thing I think is also interesting about WashU Olin, and I'm sure most schools too, but the pandemic was fascinating because now geography is loosened a little bit too. So it's really fun for folks in St. Louis, not just to connect to St. Louisans, but also folks on both coasts in the United States and global too, because that's really where the WashU network is across the world. But yes, it's a great lab here in St. Louis to test and work on business ideas, and we do have so many graduates stay here too and grow their companies. But we also have them growing them in Chicago and New York and in San Francisco too. But we're very proud of St. Louis.
So if you're out there, you have an idea, you want to enter our contest, you can email Doug and contact him and get a little advice. You can simply fill out our form, which is on our website, and answer the questions. It probably would take you less than 5 minutes to do that. And see if you can be among the chosen 3 who go to St. Louis in March and compete in person in what will ultimately be a TV show that we will put out there, record, and you'll be judged and get a lot of great feedback as well. And incidentally, while the top prize is $50,000, the runners up, number 2 and number 3, also went away with a cash award as well. So it's not a winner take all situation when you're a finalist in this test.
Yep. That's exactly right. Not to mention just the iteration, John, of talking about your business and improving your business and preparing for this competition or other competitions. Winning is awesome. Don't get me wrong, winning is awesome, but learning something is better. And there's just no question that you would have learned something through this process as well.
That's really true. I'm really excited to see what kind of ideas flow through here. We had a great time, really great fun sifting through all the wonderful ideas. And frankly, it was very hard to narrow them down to 10 or 12 to get to the 3. Finally, it was really painstaking because we had so many good ideas, Doug.
Yeah, and in fact, and I don't know, maybe doing this last second here on the screen might not be the best idea in the world, but this is a photo here, John, of me and Linda, and the gentleman in the middle there is wearing a vest. Okay, is wearing a vest, and this is a vest that listens to your heartbeat, so that a doctor can be on the computer, but can actually listen to your heart in a telemedicine engagement because you're actually wearing that vest. Well, they were a finalist last year, John, and all they had was a drawing of it, and that photo is their working prototype now of this, and that is in part by the money that they won in the contest, being able to fund the prototyping stage too. So that just happened last night. So that's kind of exciting too, to watch the progress even of our semifinalists.
That's really great. I know she did a terrific presentation last year. I'm glad to hear that she's making big progress.
Yeah, that's right. And I think it goes back to what you're talking about at the beginning too, which is a drawing got her into the finals there, but actually having a working prototype is what wins, if you will.
All right.
Yeah, very good.
So hey, for all of you out there, enter the contest. You have everything to gain, nothing to lose. The deadline is January 15th. We're really looking forward to seeing your submissions and judging them. And we're really excited by what this whole elevator pitch thing is going to do. I mean, one of the cool things too was getting the 2-minute video pitches after we selected the first round of finalists, and just going through those pitches and seeing how dynamic they were. Really cool stuff.
Yeah, and John, welcome to being an entrepreneurship professor. This is part and parcel to what we do and to what our students do. So very exciting.
All right, Doug, thank you so much. And all of you, thank you for watching. This is John Byrne with Poets and Quants.